I felt that these two episodes were a lot better when I first watched them for the first time, but after watching all the episodes, they're still good episodes, but the thing is, it's difficult to look at how impressive these two episodes are, knowing full well that as of now, with characters being paired with different characters after Ellis for Love and the fact that the Casagrandes came to an end, it's really difficult to look at these two episodes as one of the best episodes involving two shows. What these two episodes have in common is the fact that the parents are the main focus. Granted, the majority of the Loud House episode is debating on which card is it from when it comes to the Loud siblings, but in all honesty, this is the closest way you're ever going to witness parents facing each other when it comes to Loud House versus Casagrandes material, because as far as I'm concerned, since that this is the final video involving Valentine's Half Month 5, then be prepared to understand that you're probably never going to see another episode involving a topic like this. I would discuss the Loud House's plot first, but I already have, and the thing is, the Casagrandes plot is somewhat important because there's a major difference. They saw that Estino's prediction that Maria and Arturo getting back together, Bobby and Ryan stop at nothing to rekindle their relationship so that they can have a better life. Usually the plot of the Casagrandes is most likely predictable because it shows that Arturo and Maria will never go back together, especially the prediction that Bobby and Ryan saw from on TV. You would be in their shoes. Because as far as I'm concerned, if there's one thing that this family has that the Loud family doesn't, is a divorce. And if the Loud family ever had that, it would have been a different show completely, with half of the siblings picking either side that they should go with, especially since it would be a lot more difficult to handle 11 siblings with one parent. And in all honesty, if the Casagrandes wasn't this family that we all remembered back in 2017, then it would have been like the Loud family all over again. Basically the Loud family 2.0, but even if you may say it may be 2.0, at least they made changes. But if I'm gonna be perfectly honest, Ellis for Love's problems is the fact of how it ages over time. Like, I understand that not every single Loud sibling is going to have a boyfriend or, in Lincoln's case, a girlfriend, but I've already addressed Lincoln's character before, so I'm just gonna say this right now, that it may be nice for the characters to find a way to be in a romantic relationship despite being at a young age with a certain somebody. But at the same time, with one of the characters, mainly Lucy and Lenny, have multiple crushes on different characters, then it really feels like if the other characters, mainly Lola, Lana, and the others, have different crushes, then I can instantly tell that this episode really feels a lot more odd-putting, knowing full well that the majority of Loud siblings have different crushes. Granted, it did a good job involving Luann and Luna, but at the same time, it really feels a lot more off-putting, knowing full well that in the future of the Loud House, they have different crushes that it may be relatable if you have multiple crushes, but at the same time, it just goes to show that the show itself can't make up its mind whether or not it should be canon for a Loud sibling to be paired with a certain somebody permanently. But if I'm gonna be perfectly honest, Esterno from In Date with Destiny making a prediction that Ryan and Bobby's parents might come back together, I always have mixed opinions towards this character since he appears briefly in the show, and for how it gave the motivation of Ryan and Bobby to work together in order to get their parents back together. There would be no other way for Ryan and Bobby to do anything involving their divorced parents. Granted, it's debatable if whether of you like some of the characters in the show, but at the same time, I really felt like that without Esteno, I'm pretty sure that there would have been nothing at all for this episode to happen. Though at the same time, even by watching this episode for the first time, it's really obvious that their parents will never go back together. It just shows that if there was at least one episode of how they got divorced in the first place, then it might be an indication that it's impossible for the two to reconcile after all the years of being away from each other. If anything, it just made me ashamed that we never had an episode where we figure out the secrets behind Maria's divorce with her husband, to the point that we never had a centered episode involving Maria in this show, which is a huge disappointment. Granted, when it comes to Lindsay and Rita, they had centered episodes of their own, which goes to show that after the 3-year run that the Casagrandes had, it's really, really difficult to believe that Maria never had a centered episode of her character completely, while the other characters ended up getting episodes of their own. But with that being said, getting back to Alice for Love, since it's been revealed that the letter was actually from Lindsay all along, this is where my theory comes into play, because for me personally, if I'm ever going to talk about these characters again, it'll be mostly centering on the bad episodes. But just to state this right now, judging of what we saw in this flashback, not only it's good, but it's basically an indication that Rita and Lindsay never argued with each other. Like, the Loud siblings do argue and fight against each other, but when it comes to Rita and Lindsay, they never argue, which somewhat makes sense onto why they never intervene in Brawl in the family, but for me personally, the finalization is difficult to take it seriously, but my theory is mostly true for how this episode established involving the relationship of Lindsay and Rita. As much as I understand that the Loud siblings were hoping that the card was from somebody else, it still gave them the motivation to send a card to one of their love interests. Granted, it didn't work out for Lincoln and the others, but when it comes to Luna, Luann, it worked out for them. And in all honesty, it just goes to show that the ambition that Lindsay and Rita did when it comes to Rita sending the letter to Lindsay just goes to show that their bond is so indestructible. However, that doesn't apply to Ryan and Bobby's parents from the way the ending is set up. Because to be perfectly honest, I didn't like this ending because of how overwhelming it is. It's really much of an indication that their parents won't be able to go back together, but at the same time, they would still be able to be part of a family regardless. Usually, it would have been one thing if I was okay with these characters not getting back together as the franchise comes to an end, but with little information about them just goes to show that there was not a lot of effort involving the Casagrandes. Yes, there is when it comes to a few instances like the improvements over the Loud House episodes, but whenever I look at this episode, it really felt like it would have been a lot more if it was taken seriously in the same fashion as Alice for Love. The element that saves this episode for me is the pacing, because for me personally, this episode is fine for being 11 minutes in the same fashion as Alice for Love being 11 minutes. And I really feel like that the beginning to end, aside from the ending, just made me appreciate the ambition that the people who have been working on the earlier seasons of the Loud House put their passion in this episode. Granted, I wish that they would have done a lot more when it comes to the future of Season 3 of the Casagrandes, but at the same time, at least we can admire the ambition that they put in when it comes to the two parents that got divorced, and two of those siblings are trying everything to get them back together. But at the same time, it's never going to happen because their parents are nothing like Linso and Rita. But considering that Eras for Love, despite its problems, is the superior episode, The Loud House gets a point, which it's down to 6-6, which is another draw. But on the other hand, I'm really having little ideals involving comparing a Loud House episode to a Casagrandes episode. I mean, they are, and there might be another one next week, but as of now, I'm really low on ideals. So I'm giving Eras for Love an 8 out of 10, while A Date with Destiny gets a 7 out of 10.